Today, I am going to speak about one of the darkest and most frightening parts of human society, the most dangerous prisons in the world. Prisons are meant to punish criminals, protect society, and help people change their lives. However, some prisons around the world are known not only for holding dangerous criminals, but also for violence, overcrowding, torture, riots, and inhuman conditions. These prisons have become symbols of fear and suffering. One of the most well-known dangerous prisons is Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in the United States. Built on an isolated island, it once held some of America's most feared criminals. Prisoners face strict discipline and almost impossible escape conditions. Another terrifying prison is Black Dolphin Prison in Russia. It houses murderers, terrorists, and cannibals. Prisoners are constantly watched, and security is extremely strict. Many inmates spend their entire lives there. In San Pedro prison, conditions are very unusual. Prisoners often live with their families inside the prison, and inmates must buy their own cells. Crime and drug activities have reportedly existed inside the prison walls. Guadarrama prison became infamous because of severe overcrowding. Thousands of prisoners were packed into a space built for far fewer people. Poor sanitation and disease made survival difficult. Another feared prison is ADX Florence, also called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It is considered one of the most secure prisons in the world. Prisoners spend nearly 23 hours a day alone in small cells with little human contact. These prisons show us that crime and punishment are serious issues. While dangerous criminals must be controlled, human rights and dignity should never be forgotten. A prison should not only punish people but also give them a chance to improve and return to society as better individuals. In conclusion, the world's most dangerous prisons remind us of both the dangers of crime and the importance of justice. They teach us that society must balance security with humanity. A safer world is created not only through punishment, but also through fairness, education, and rehabilitation. Prisons play an important role in every society because they are created to maintain law and order. When people commit serious crimes such as murder, robbery, terrorism, kidnapping, or violence, governments place them in prisons to protect innocent citizens from danger. The main purpose of a prison is to separate criminals from society so that they cannot continue harming other people. In this way, prisons help create safety and security within communities. Another important purpose of prisons is punishment. When someone breaks the law, they must face consequences for their actions. Prison sentences are meant to show that crime has serious results and that laws must be respected. This punishment also acts as a warning to others, discouraging them from committing crimes. Many governments believe that strict prison systems help reduce criminal activity because people fear losing their freedom. Prisons are also intended to help prisoners change their behavior. In many countries, prisons offer education programs, vocational training, counseling, and rehabilitation activities. These programs are designed to teach inmates useful skills, improve their thinking, and prepare them for life after release. The goal is to help prisoners become responsible citizens instead of returning to crime after leaving prison. However, in some of the world's most dangerous prisons, conditions are extremely harsh. Overcrowding, violence, poor sanitation, lack of medical care, and brutal treatment can turn prisons into places of suffering rather than rehabilitation. Instead of helping prisoners improve, these environments sometimes increase anger, fear, and criminal behavior. Dangerous gangs may control prison activities, and weaker prisoners often live in constant fear. Security is another major feature of dangerous prisons. Guards use strict surveillance systems, armed patrols, locked cells, and high walls to prevent escapes and maintain control. Some prisons keep inmates in solitary confinement for many hours each day to reduce violence and stop communication between dangerous criminals. These measures show how seriously governments treat high-risk prisoners and organized crime. The existence of dangerous prisons also raises important questions about human rights and justice. While criminals must be punished for their actions, many people believe that prisoners should still be treated with basic dignity and fairness. Human rights organizations often criticize prisons where inmates face torture, starvation, or inhumane conditions. This creates debate about how societies should balance security with humanity. Around the world, certain prisons have gained a terrifying reputation because of the extreme conditions inside them. These prisons are not ordinary correctional facilities. They are places where violence, fear, and suffering are part of daily life. Many of them hold the world's most dangerous criminals, including murderers, gang leaders, terrorists, drug traffickers, and serial offenders. Because of the serious crimes committed by these inmates, prison authorities often enforce very strict security measures to maintain control and prevent escapes. Violence is one of the main reasons these prisons are feared. In many dangerous prisons, fights between prisoners happen regularly due to gang rivalries, personal conflicts, overcrowding, or competition for food and resources. Some prisons are heavily controlled by criminal gangs that operate inside the prison walls. These gangs may threaten weaker inmates, organize attacks, smuggle illegal items, and create an atmosphere of constant danger. In certain prisons, prisoners carry homemade weapons, making everyday survival difficult and frightening. Harsh living conditions are another major problem in many dangerous prisons. Overcrowding is common, with prisons holding far more inmates than they were designed for. Prisoners may be forced to sleep on floors or share tiny cells with many other inmates. Poor sanitation, dirty water, lack of ventilation, and limited medical care can lead to the spread of diseases and serious health problems. In some prisons, food supplies are inadequate, and inmates suffer from hunger and malnutrition. These difficult conditions can increase frustration, anger, and violence among prisoners. Strict security systems are used to control these dangerous environments. High-security prisons often have massive walls, electric fences, surveillance cameras, armed guards, attack dogs, and heavily locked cells. Prisoners are closely monitored at all times to reduce the risk of escape or rebellion. Some inmates are kept in solitary confinement, where they spend up to 23 hours a day alone in small cells with little human contact. Authorities believe such measures are necessary to control highly dangerous criminals, but critics argue that extreme isolation can severely damage mental health. Riots and escape attempts have also made some prisons internationally famous. When prisoners protest against poor treatment or fight for control, riots can break out, causing destruction, injuries, and deaths. Guards may use force to stop these uprisings, leading to even more violence. In some prisons, escape attempts have involved tunnels, hidden weapons, bribery, and carefully planned attacks on security staff. These incidents increase the fear and reputation surrounding such prisons. Media reports, documentaries, and survivor stories have further exposed the realities inside these prisons. Accounts of torture, abuse, corruption, and brutal punishments have shocked people around the world. Human rights organizations often investigate these prisons and criticize governments for failing to provide humane treatment to inmates. Despite this criticism, many governments continue to use strict prison systems because they believe strong control is necessary to maintain public safety and manage dangerous criminals. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary became one of the most famous and feared prisons in the history of the United States because of its strict security, isolated location, and the dangerous criminals it housed. Located on a rocky island in San Francisco Bay, the prison was surrounded by cold water and powerful ocean currents, making escape extremely difficult. Its isolated position alone created fear among prisoners because once they arrived on the island, they felt completely cut off from the outside world. Originally, Alcatraz was used as a military prison before becoming a federal prison in 1934. The United States government transformed it into a maximum security facility designed to hold the country's most dangerous and troublesome criminals. Many prisoners sent there had already caused problems in other prisons through violence, escape attempts, or repeated criminal behavior. Authorities believed that Alcatraz's strict rules and heavy security could control even the most difficult inmates. The prison became internationally known because it held several infamous criminals. One of the most famous inmates was Al Capone, the powerful gangster involved in organized crime during the 1920s and 1930s. Another notorious prisoner was George Kelly. Housing such dangerous figures increased the prison's reputation as a place for criminals considered too dangerous for ordinary prisons. Life inside Alcatraz was extremely strict and harsh. Prisoners followed rigid daily schedules and were expected to obey every rule. Basic privileges such as talking, reading, or recreational activities could be taken away as punishment. Many inmates spent long periods in small cells with little comfort. Solitary confinement was commonly used for prisoners who broke prison rules, forcing them to stay alone in dark, isolated cells for extended periods. This punishment created fear among inmates because of the mental stress caused by isolation and silence. The prison security system was one of the strongest of its time. Armed guards constantly monitored prisoners, and the prison was designed with steel bars, locked doors, guard towers, and regular security checks. The freezing waters around the island acted as a natural barrier against escape. Prison officials believed that no prisoner could successfully escape and survive the dangerous currents and cold temperatures of San Francisco Bay. Despite these measures, Alcatraz became famous for dramatic escape attempts. The most well-known escape occurred in 1962 when inmates Frank Morris and brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin disappeared after escaping through tunnels they secretly created in their cells. They used handmade tools and fake heads placed in their beds to trick guards during the night. Their disappearance became one of the greatest prison mysteries in American history because it remains uncertain whether they survived the escape or died in the cold ocean waters. The harsh conditions and high operating costs eventually led to the closure of Alcatraz in 1963. Maintaining the prison on an isolated island was expensive because all supplies, food, and fresh water had to be transported by boat. After its closure, the prison became a historical landmark and tourist attraction visited by millions of people from around the world. Even today, stories about Alcatraz continue to appear in books, documentaries, and movies, strengthening its image as one of the most dangerous and legendary prisons ever built. Black Dolphin Prison is considered one of the harshest and most feared prisons in the world. Located near the border of Kazakhstan in Russia's Orenburg region, the prison is famous for holding some of the country's most dangerous criminals. Murderers, terrorists, serial killers, kidnappers, and violent offenders serving life sentences are kept inside this highly secured facility. Many prisoners there have committed multiple murders or extremely brutal crimes, making the prison a symbol of fear and strict punishment. The prison gets its unusual name from a black dolphin statue located outside the prison entrance. Despite the harmless image suggested by the name, the reality inside the prison is extremely severe. Most inmates in Black Dolphin will never leave because they are serving life sentences. The prison is designed to ensure complete control over prisoners and prevent any possibility of escape or rebellion. Security inside Black Dolphin Prison is exceptionally strict. Prisoners are constantly monitored by guards and surveillance systems. Inmates are usually blindfolded when moved from one area to another, so they cannot learn the prison's layout. Guards often force prisoners to walk bent forward with their hands restrained behind their backs. These strict procedures are intended to reduce the risk of attacks, communication between inmates, or escape attempts. The living conditions are also extremely harsh. Prisoners spend most of their lives inside small cells shared with one or two other inmates. They are locked inside for nearly the entire day and allowed very limited movement outside their cells. Even during short exercise periods, prisoners remain under heavy supervision. Contact with the outside world is highly restricted, and many inmates rarely see family members or experience normal human interaction. Daily routines inside the prison are tightly controlled. Prisoners must follow strict rules at all times. Guards conduct frequent inspections, and inmates are expected to obey every command immediately. Sleeping during daytime hours is prohibited, and prisoners are often required to keep their hands visible to guards. These rules are designed to maintain discipline and stop prisoners from planning violence or escape attempts. Black Dolphin Prison is also known for the psychological pressure placed on inmates. Spending decades under constant surveillance, isolation, and strict discipline can have severe effects on mental health. Many prisoners experience hopelessness because they know they will spend the rest of their lives inside the prison walls. The environment is intentionally designed to remove freedom, independence, and comfort from inmates considered too dangerous for society. The prison has become internationally famous through documentaries, news reports, and discussions about human rights. Critics argue that the extreme conditions and treatment of prisoners may violate basic human dignity. Human rights organizations have raised concerns about the mental and physical impact of long-term isolation and strict control methods. However, Russian authorities defend the prison system by stating that such measures are necessary to control highly violent criminals and protect society from dangerous offenders. Because of its terrifying reputation, extreme security measures, and the dangerous nature of its inmates, Black Dolphin Prison is often described as one of the toughest prisons ever created. It represents a system focused heavily on punishment, discipline, and control, where prisoners live under constant restriction and surveillance for the rest of their lives. San Pedro Prison is one of the most unusual and controversial prisons in the world because life inside the prison is very different from what people normally expect from a correctional facility. Located in the city of La Paz, Bolivia, the prison became internationally famous due to its prisoner-controlled environment, lack of strict traditional security, and the strange social system that developed inside its walls. Unlike many prisons where guards maintain full control, much of the daily life inside San Pedro has historically been organized and managed by the inmates themselves. One of the most shocking features of San Pedro Prison is that prisoners are often required to buy or rent their own cells. Wealthier inmates can afford larger and more comfortable living spaces, while poorer prisoners may live in crowded and unhealthy conditions. Some cells contain televisions, kitchens, and furniture, creating major differences between prisoners based on money and influence. This unusual system creates a society inside the prison where wealth plays an important role in determining a prisoner's quality of life. Another highly unusual aspect of San Pedro Prison is that some prisoners have been allowed to live with their families inside the prison. Wives and children have reportedly stayed with inmates, creating an environment that resembles a small community more than a traditional prison. Children living inside the prison may attend school and spend time in common areas, despite being surrounded by criminals and prison life. This situation has raised serious concerns among human rights groups and international observers about the safety and well-being of children growing up in such an environment. The prison has also gained attention because of reports of illegal activities taking place inside its walls. Drug trafficking and criminal operations have allegedly existed within the prison for years. Some reports claim that inmates could run businesses, sell goods, and even organize illegal trade while serving their sentences. Corruption and weak security controls contributed to these activities, allowing prisoners to gain significant power inside the facility. Unlike high-security prisons with heavily armed guards and constant surveillance, San Pedro Prison has traditionally operated with limited direct control from authorities. Prisoners form their own leadership structures and systems of organization. Certain inmate groups controlled different areas of the prison, settled disputes, and enforced internal rules. This self-governed system created a unique but dangerous environment where stronger or wealthier inmates often held more influence and authority than others. Living conditions inside the prison have often been criticized for overcrowding and poor sanitation. Many inmates live in small spaces with inadequate health care and limited resources. Poor prisoners may struggle to obtain food, clothing, or medical treatment. These harsh conditions can increase tension and conflict among inmates, especially between those with financial resources and those without them. San Pedro Prison became widely known outside Bolivia after books, documentaries, and media investigations revealed details about life inside the prison. One of the most famous accounts came from foreigners who described the prison as a hidden society operating under its own rules. These stories attracted international attention because they showed a prison system unlike almost any other in the world. Human rights organizations and critics have raised serious concerns about the prison's conditions, corruption, and lack of proper government control. They argue that allowing criminal activity and family living arrangements inside the prison creates dangerous social problems and weakens the purpose of imprisonment. At the same time, some observers believe the prison's unusual system developed because of poverty, overcrowding, and limited government resources within Bolivia's prison system. San Pedro Prison remains one of the world's most fascinating and disturbing examples of how prison systems can operate differently under extreme social and economic conditions. Its combination of prisoner control, inequality, family presence, and criminal activity has made it one of the most talked-about prisons in modern history. Gitarama Prison became internationally known as one of the most overcrowded and inhumane prisons in the world. The prison gained global attention after the 1994 Rwandan genocide, one of the deadliest mass killings in modern history. Following the genocide, thousands of people accused of participating in violent crimes and ethnic massacres were arrested and placed in prisons across Rwanda. Gitarama Prison, which was originally built to hold only a few hundred inmates, suddenly became filled with thousands of prisoners far beyond its intended capacity. The extreme overcrowding inside the prison created horrifying living conditions. Inmates were packed tightly together in small rooms with almost no space to move. Many prisoners had to stand for long periods because there was not enough room to sit or lie down. Some reports described prisoners sleeping while standing or leaning against each other due to the lack of space. The overcrowded environment made normal daily life almost impossible and created constant physical and mental suffering for inmates. Poor sanitation quickly became one of the prison's most serious problems. With thousands of prisoners sharing limited facilities, toilets and washing areas became overwhelmed. Clean water was often difficult to access, and waste management systems could not handle the large number of inmates. As a result, diseases spread rapidly throughout the prison. Skin infections, respiratory illnesses, diarrhea, and other contagious diseases became common because prisoners were living in unsanitary and unhealthy conditions. Medical care inside the prison was extremely limited. There were not enough doctors, medicine, or healthcare resources to treat the growing number of sick prisoners. Many inmates suffered from untreated illnesses and injuries, while weak prisoners struggled to survive in the overcrowded conditions. Malnutrition and hunger also became serious concerns because food supplies were often insufficient for the large prison population. Prisoners sometimes became physically weak due to poor nutrition and harsh living conditions. One of the most disturbing consequences of the overcrowding was the physical damage caused to prisoners' bodies. Because inmates were forced to stand for long periods in tightly packed spaces, some reportedly developed severe swelling and infections in their legs and feet. In extreme cases, prisoners experienced tissue damage and serious health complications caused by the inability to move properly for extended periods of time. The prison became a symbol of the enormous challenges Rwanda faced after the genocide. The country's legal system struggled to process the huge number of people accused of crimes related to the violence. Courts and prisons were overwhelmed, and the government lacked the resources needed to handle the crisis effectively. As a result, prisons like Gitarama became overcrowded far beyond safe or humane limits. International human rights organizations strongly criticized the conditions inside Gitarama Prison. Reports described the prison as a humanitarian disaster where prisoners were exposed to disease, starvation, and severe suffering. Aid organizations and international observers called for urgent reforms, improved prison conditions, and faster legal processes to reduce overcrowding. These reports drew global attention to the difficult situation facing Rwanda during the years following the genocide. Despite the terrible conditions, Gitarama Prison also represented the broader struggle of a country trying to recover from one of history's worst tragedies. Rwanda faced the difficult task of delivering justice for genocide victims while managing thousands of accused individuals within a damaged legal and prison system. The prison became an example of how conflict, mass violence, and weak infrastructure can create severe humanitarian problems inside correctional facilities. The story of Gitarama Prison highlights the dangers of overcrowding in prisons and the importance of proper healthcare, sanitation, and human rights protections. It demonstrates how prisons can become places of extreme suffering when governments lack the resources or systems needed to manage large numbers of inmates safely and humanely. ADX Florence is widely considered one of the most secure and strict prisons in the world. Officially known as the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, the prison is located in Florence, Colorado, and is often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It was built to house the most dangerous and high-risk criminals in the United States, including terrorists, gang leaders, spies, violent offenders, and prisoners who have caused serious problems in other prisons. The prison is designed to maintain maximum control over inmates and prevent violence, escape attempts, and communication with criminal organizations outside the prison. The security system at ADX Florence is extremely advanced and strict. The prison is surrounded by high walls, razor wire, electronic surveillance systems, armed guards, motion detectors, and heavily controlled entry points. Every movement inside the prison is carefully monitored. Inmates are escorted under tight supervision whenever they leave their cells, and prison officials follow strict procedures to reduce any risk of attacks or escape attempts. One of the most well-known features of ADX Florence is the use of extreme isolation. Most prisoners spend around 23 hours a day alone inside small concrete cells. These cells are specially designed to limit communication and contact with the outside world. The furniture inside the cells, including the bed, desk, and stool, is often made from solid concrete and attached to the floor. Windows are narrow and positioned in a way that prevents prisoners from seeing much of the outside environment. The goal of this design is to reduce distractions, increase control, and prevent inmates from coordinating violent activities. Human contact inside the prison is extremely limited. Prisoners eat meals alone in their cells, and recreation time often takes place in isolated concrete exercise areas, sometimes called dog runs. Communication with other inmates is heavily restricted, and visits from family members are limited and closely monitored. Many prisoners remain isolated for years or even decades, creating intense psychological pressure and loneliness. ADX Florence houses some of the most infamous criminals in modern history. Individuals convicted of terrorism, organized crime, espionage, and violent attacks have been imprisoned there because authorities consider them too dangerous for regular prisons. The prison's reputation increased after it became home to high-profile inmates connected to major criminal or terrorist activities. Housing such dangerous individuals has strengthened the prison's image as one of the toughest correctional facilities ever created. The extreme isolation used at ADX Florence has led to major debates about human rights and mental health. Critics argue that keeping prisoners alone for such long periods can cause severe psychological damage, including depression, anxiety, hallucinations, emotional breakdowns, and suicidal thoughts. Mental health experts have warned that prolonged solitary confinement can seriously affect a person's ability to think, communicate, and function normally. Human rights organizations have repeatedly criticized the prison for using conditions they consider cruel and inhumane. Supporters of the prison argue that such strict measures are necessary to protect prison staff, other inmates, and society from extremely dangerous criminals. They believe that some prisoners are too violent or influential to be safely managed in ordinary prisons. According to prison authorities, the isolation and strict control systems help prevent gang communication, terrorist planning, murders inside prisons, and escape attempts. Daily life inside ADX Florence follows highly controlled routines. Prisoners have limited personal possessions and strict schedules. Guards use advanced technology and carefully planned procedures to maintain order. Even small activities such as exercise, showers, or medical visits occur under close observation. This constant control creates an environment focused entirely on discipline, security, and restriction. The prison has become famous through documentaries, books, news reports, and public discussions about criminal justice. Many people view ADX Florence as the ultimate symbol of maximum security imprisonment. Its combination of isolation, advanced security, and dangerous inmates has made it one of the most feared prisons in the modern world. The prison systems of the world raise important questions about justice, punishment, and human dignity. Governments create prisons to punish criminals, protect society, and maintain law and order. Dangerous individuals who commit serious crimes such as murder, terrorism, kidnapping, and organized violence must face consequences for their actions. Society expects prisons to stop criminals from causing further harm and to ensure public safety. However, many experts, human rights organizations, and legal scholars argue that justice should not rely only on harsh punishment. Instead, a fair justice system must balance punishment, security, and respect for human rights. Punishment is an important part of the justice system because it holds criminals accountable for breaking the law. When courts sentence offenders to prison, the punishment is intended to show that criminal behavior has serious consequences. Strong prison systems can discourage others from committing crimes by creating fear of legal punishment. In cases involving violent criminals or terrorists, strict imprisonment may also be necessary to protect innocent people from danger. Many maximum security prisons are designed specifically to control individuals considered highly dangerous to society. Security is another essential responsibility of prisons. Prison authorities must prevent escapes, stop violence inside prisons, and maintain order among inmates. Dangerous prisons often use advanced surveillance systems, armed guards, controlled movement, isolation units, and strict regulations to maintain control. Governments argue that these measures are necessary because some prisoners may continue criminal activities even while incarcerated. High-security systems are intended to protect prison staff, other inmates, and the general public from violent or organized criminal behavior. At the same time, human rights remain a major concern in prison systems around the world. Even though prisoners have committed crimes, many people believe they should still be treated with basic dignity and humanity. International human rights laws state that prisoners should not face torture, starvation, cruel punishment, or inhumane treatment. Every prisoner, regardless of their crime, remains a human being with certain basic rights. These rights include access to food, clean water, healthcare, safety, and protection from abuse. In some dangerous prisons, however, conditions become so severe that they create serious ethical and humanitarian concerns. Overcrowding, disease, violence, physical abuse, and extreme isolation can cause both physical and mental suffering. Human rights organizations often criticize prisons where inmates are denied medical care, exposed to torture, or forced to live in degrading conditions. Critics argue that such treatment may increase anger, trauma, and violence rather than helping prisoners improve their behavior. The issue of solitary confinement is one of the most debated topics in modern prison systems. Some maximum security prisons keep inmates isolated for long periods to prevent violence or communication with criminal groups. Supporters believe isolation helps maintain security and control over dangerous prisoners. However, psychologists and human rights experts warn that long-term isolation can seriously damage mental health, leading to depression, anxiety, hallucinations, and emotional breakdowns. This debate highlights the difficulty of balancing public safety with humane treatment. Rehabilitation is another important part of justice. Many experts believe prisons should not only punish criminals, but also help them change and prepare for a better future. Educational programs, counseling, job training, and mental health support can help prisoners develop useful skills and reduce the likelihood of returning to crime after release. Rehabilitation aims to transform offenders into responsible citizens who can contribute positively to society. Countries with stronger rehabilitation systems often experience lower rates of repeated criminal behavior. The balance between punishment and rehabilitation can be difficult, especially when dealing with extremely dangerous criminals. Some people believe violent offenders deserve only strict punishment, while others argue that every individual should be given the opportunity to improve. Different countries approach this issue in different ways depending on their laws, culture, and prison systems. Some nations focus heavily on harsh discipline and maximum security, while others place greater emphasis on education, therapy, and social reintegration. Media coverage and documentaries about dangerous prisons have also influenced public opinion about justice systems. Stories about violence, corruption, and harsh prison conditions often create fear and anger among the public. Some people demand tougher punishments for criminals, while others become concerned about abuse and human rights violations inside prisons. These discussions continue to shape debates about how prisons should operate and what true justice should look like in modern society. The existence of dangerous prisons shows that maintaining justice is a complex challenge. Governments must protect society from crime while also ensuring that prisons do not become places of unnecessary cruelty and suffering. A fair justice system requires strong security, lawful punishment, respect for human dignity, and opportunities for rehabilitation.